I am Thanteri Johnson. I go by Z. I am the Community Manager for QuestionPro, and today we are going to be covering Make Your Survey Smart, adding logic to your surveys using QuestionPro. If you joined us last week, you know already a little bit of how we're going to approach this. We're going to start with some research best practices, and then we're going to focus on four types of logic. I was looking at the word extraction. We're going to first talk about probably the most commonly used piece of logic, which is branching. Then we're going to talk about using a dynamic text box. Then we're going to look at extraction and scoring. So those will be the four main types of logic that we look at today. I'll give you a little overview of all of the types of logic that you can use, but we're really going to focus on those four in today's demo of how to use logic in your surveys. So let's take a look at what we have for our research best practices. When it comes to putting together your survey, of course, the first thing that you want to focus on is what is the main purpose of your survey. And in order to focus your survey, you can use a logic to make sure that you're not being redundant, to make sure that you're really focusing all the questions to your respondents so that they are only answering the questions that are most pertinent to them. This helps you keep the survey as short as possible. In a previous role that I had, we had an extremely long survey. It looked super long, but we had all sorts of logic included so that it would only be a maximum of 15 minutes. It was a telephone survey, and we timed it every time that we tested it to make sure that we stayed within those 15 minutes. In fact, we even went so far as to remove questions if we were going over that 15-minute mark too often. And so it was our goal to make sure that no one was going to go over 15 minutes on a phone survey taking this particular survey, which meant we had tons of branching. So keep in mind the time that it's taking to take your survey as well as the number of questions per page for your online surveys, especially. Make sure that you're looking at the full customer responded experience. As always, keep your questions as direct as possible and make sure as much as possible you're only asking pertinent questions to your respondents. We're going to look at today ways that you can use logic to really make sure you're not being redundant. I think that's one of the things that happens most often in surveys is we ask a question up front, we get an answer, but we don't use logic to skip over questions later in the survey that might not apply to the respondent. So let's take a look at logic. Let's take a look at how we can avoid being redundant in our surveys and how we can use logic to make sure our respondents are only getting the questions that they really need to be getting. So we're going to look at QuestionPro. And I have here just a quick survey about ice cream. It's getting to be summertime. I'm really enjoying the fact that the weather is warming up. And whenever warm weather hits, I always think of going out and eating ice cream. So we're going to be looking at just a quick, simple survey that is asking people what flavors of ice cream do you like? How often do you purchase ice cream? Because we have a question here, first question acknowledges the fact that maybe not everyone likes ice cream. Maybe some people like frozen yogurt. So we've included that as an option. And people who answer that can then see a question about how often do you purchase frozen yogurt? We're going to add some logic to make sure that people who answer I like frozen yogurt see the question, how often do you purchase it? Whereas people who don't even have to know it existed in the survey to begin with. So to do that, we're going to go up to our first question. And any question that you program in QuestionPro, you're going to be able to see this flyout menu on the right, and we're going to click Logic. So you'll see that the default logic or the first logic that we see is our skip branching logic. What skip branching logic does is it allows you to branch to a different part of the survey based on the answers given to a question early in the survey. So for example, I said that those who answered that they liked frozen yogurt would get to see the question, how often do you purchase frozen yogurt? So the way that we do that is, I like frozen yogurt, we're going to select branching, goes to how often do you purchase frozen yogurt. Everyone else is going to branch to the next question, which is the how often do you purchase ice cream. So we're just going to set that up here. Now when you're setting up branching logic, one of the things that you really want to be sure that you do as well is set up your default destination. That means the question that your respondents will go to if they do not select any option that branches them somewhere else. So if they don't trigger any logic, what's going to happen? Well, here we're just going to have them go to the next question. All right, so we're going to save that logic. And now we see here, how often do you purchase ice cream? We're actually going to do one more thing here. I realize that this is a multiple choice question. We're going to change that to a select one question. Okay, so you can see a couple things have happened. First of all, when I changed it from a multiple choice to a single select question, we got this new little bit of information on the side. For any single select question that you program and you add logic, you're going to see a lot of that logic kind of as a little extension to the question. So right off the bat, I can see each one of these options is going to jump them to the next question unless they selected I like frozen yogurt, in which case they're going to skip question 2 and go on to question 3. All right, now we have also an automatic logic break that shows up because, of course, we don't want them to see unnecessary questions. So this QuestionPro tool automatically puts a logic break, which is essentially a page break after the question you put logic on. All right, so that is, in a nutshell, how to do simple branching or skip logic. And to test that, let's go click Preview on our flyout menu. We'll select I like frozen yogurt. Click Continue. And you see it skipped over the second question, goes straight to how often do you purchase frozen yogurt. All right, so that is branching. Now we're going to look at some of the other questions we added in this particular survey. And we're going to add a dynamic comment box. So we have here, when do you plan on buying ice cream next? So this focuses on people who are on the ice cream track, so to speak. And we are going to add a dynamic comment box. You can see here that there's a little comment bubble that shows that I already have a dynamic comment box added on this particular item. Again, this is a single select question. I'm adding a dynamic comment box to it. When I click on this little arrow next to the question, next to the answer option, I see a quick menu. I can select a branching, I can select a quota control, which this quota control is just for this particular answer. It's not for the entire survey. It just says, if I already receive X number of responses that say that people are going to buy ice cream tomorrow, then I'm going to jump them to another part of the survey or exit them out of the survey completely because I only want to hear from that number of people. And then the last thing that we have in this quick logic menu is the dynamic comment box. Now what a dynamic comment box does is it keeps you from needing to create a separate open-ended text question that then you would need to put branching logic around. So let's see how this works. We'll preview just this question. When do you plan on buying ice cream next? I'll select tomorrow. And you'll see that this dynamic comment box appears because I answered tomorrow. If I selected anything else, the dynamic comment box goes away, doesn't appear. So this saves me a little bit of time, makes it relevant, and as you can see, I can add a dynamic comment box to any of these questions. So I've done this on a couple of surveys that I've done where, depending on the answer, I wanted to ask a follow-up question, and I was able to do that using a dynamic comment box to save myself some time, as well as, again, make sure that things are staying relevant to your respondents. So that's the benefit of the dynamic comment box. If you are familiar with the reporting tools in QuestionPro, you know that we have word clouds available for any kind of open-ended text question. Those word clouds don't work if you're using the other option where people just write in something else on a list. However, they do work for dynamic comment boxes. It treats it exactly like any other full open-ended text field. So you get the benefit of having that analysis to it while making sure that you have a dynamic comment box in your survey. Again, as I'm going through, I know that sometimes I can go a little bit fast through some of these options. If you have questions, please use the Q&A module to ask those questions, and we'll try to address them while we're going through this demo today. All right, so we covered some branching. We covered dynamic comment box. The next thing I want to show is using extraction. So extraction probably sounds a little bit intimidating. It's not at all intimidating. It's actually a pretty cool tool. So we have here, what is your favorite brand of ice cream? And one thing that I can do first is we're going to change this to a select many type of question. So we'll change that type. And we'll save the question. So now people can select more than one favorite brand of ice cream. And we'll change the wording of this question just a little bit to encourage people to select more than one if they have more than one. So what are your favorite brands of ice cream? Now we're going to go click Logic. And here we're going to select Extraction. We have two different extraction types that we can use on this question. We can do simple extraction, which extracts the selected options from the respondent, creates a follow-up question that only has those selected options. We can also do the opposite. We can do reverse extraction, which extracts the options that are not selected. We're actually going to go with extracting the options that are not selected. And we're going to extract to a text input question type. Now let's save this logic and show you how this logic works. My survey has updated. Now you'll see underneath I have this logic break again, the automatic logic break, so I have a page break. And now I have this extracted question, and you can tell that it's an extracted question because after each response option I have XTR for extraction. Now I can go in here and edit this question just like I would any other question. And we'll put here, why do you not like, and we're going to put this in front of every single one of these. And so what we're doing is we're gathering some information about why our respondents don't like a particular brand. I often like to use this to ask follow-up questions on things that our respondents have selected rather than a reverse extraction. But this gives you an idea of how you could use that reverse extraction option. Now let's test this out. So let's go preview from this question again by clicking the preview on the flyout menu. We're going to say I really am not a fan of Schwann's or my store brand. We'll continue. Oh, sorry. I said that I did like those two. And my follow-up asks, why did I not like any of the others that I didn't select? So that's one way that you can use reverse extraction. If I wanted to ask a follow-up question about, for this, asking why they liked their favorite brand of ice cream so much, I could do that using simple extraction. One caveat, I cannot have two different types of extraction questions off of the same originating question. So if I want to do this again, I can create this question again. I can do another type of extraction, but one type of extraction per question. So this is my extraction. I did reverse extraction, getting some information. Now we're going to go on and do some scoring, add some scoring to this question. So down here at the very bottom, I have a question that says, thank you for participating in our survey. Your score of, and we're going to tell them their score, means you get a coupon for your next visit. So if you've never used custom variables before, you've never had to call them out in your surveys, it's very simple. The score variable is a custom variable, and the way that you call it out is you're going to do $, open curly bracket, score, close curly bracket. Now let's go add some scores to our questions so that we can add something up. We're going to add a little bit of logic to show or hide this question based on a score, or based on an answer that they give. So let's go up here and let's say, if I am Tillamook and I want to promote using a coupon, we're going to add a score here that says more settings. On the left, you'll see score at the bottom. And I've added a score value of 10 for anyone who says that they like Tillamook, that's one of their favorite brands. I can add other score values, but really, I'm Tillamook. I'm only interested in people who say that they like Tillamook as far as giving them a coupon. So I'm going to keep this score value of 10 here. We'll save that score. And now we'll go down here, and we're going to add a show hide logic option. So we'll go click logic, and I've defined a criteria already. So to define a criteria, I click create new, and we'll say Tillamook lovers is the name of our criteria. It's based on responses to the survey. I can set up this criteria to be based on custom variables. If you join us next week to talk about personalizing and customizing surveys, we'll go more in depth into custom variables. We're going to select responses to the survey. We'll say we want this to be on favorite brands, and if it equals Tillamook, we're going to save and use this criteria. So my criteria is people who answered the question so that they liked Tillamook. I want to show this criteria, show this particular question, which is a presentation text question, if the criteria matches. So I've selected here. I can also hide the question. I can show it by default, hide the question based on criteria. I can also enable dynamic logic. So this works just like the dynamic comment box. Based on an answer, then suddenly they'll see a new question. Right now I'm just going to use it as a regular show hide question logic. So we'll save that logic. And I've added some other scores in here just for fun. Let's go up to the top of our survey and let's preview the whole thing using all of the different types of logic. So we'll click the big preview button at the top, pull up our survey, and take it from the beginning. So what flavor of ice cream do you like? I happen to like pistachio. How often do you purchase? My favorite brand happens to be Tillamook, followed by Ben & Jerry's. You can skip this question. So because I selected Tillamook, I now see this thank you for participating in our survey. I got a score of 23. I had added some other scores earlier when I was working on the survey. I get a coupon on my next visit. Let's test it for not selecting Tillamook. So let's preview again. We'll select these options again. And now you'll see I skipped that last question and went straight to the thank you page. So that is a way that you can use a score. I can then use that score as in my finish options, and I can create a finish option that has a link that shows, again, calling out your score of, and we'll call out that score again. So $ curly bracket score, close curly bracket. So I've included that here. I can put a coupon code, I can put in an image of a coupon or a link that takes them to where they can print out that coupon. But this is a way that I can use that score in another area of my survey, calling out that score, getting them to be able to get that coupon. And we'll save that and we can just run with it there. So we've added some simple branching logic. We added extraction logic. Reverse extraction was what we did. We added a dynamic comment box. We could have added more of those. And we looked at show hide logic as well as how to do some scoring in your survey, and one particular case scenario where you could use that score to give a reward to survey respondents. So that's some of our logic options. I want to close by just showing the rest of our logic options just at a high level. So you'll see here, if I click on logic for any one of my questions, I'm going to see all of my logic options listed on the left. So I have my regular branching skip logic. I have compound or delayed branching, which lets you do branching based off of multiple questions earlier in the survey. You can trigger it later in the survey using that criteria that I showed you how we set up that criteria for the show hide logic. You can do the same thing using compound delayed branching. I have quota control. We talked about that when we looked at the quick logic menu. We have the dynamic text or comment box, show hide question logic. We can also show hide options. So this is another one based on criteria. You can show certain options to a question as opposed to hiding the entire question. And then we also have our scoring logic. So these are all of the different types of logic that are available. We have excellent help files as well as 24/7 support. If you are trying to use one of these types of logic and you get a little caught up, you can go to our help site, QuestionPro.com/help. You can look up any of these types of logic and it should get you to a step-by-step how to use that logic in your survey. You can also contact our support team. We have the online chat available from that QuestionPro.com/help. You can contact one of our support staff who will also help you step by step on how to get that logic to work in your survey. Again, if there are questions, please feel free to submit them. And as you are formulating those questions, next week we are going to be talking about personalizing and customizing your survey. So we looked at the custom variable score today. Next week, we're going to look more at other custom variables that you can add to your surveys to make a personalized experience for your respondents. And we're also going to look at how to customize your survey from a simple theme to a full brand experience using full CSS customization to create a fully personalized and customized experience for your respondents. And we'll finish out by showing how you can use the custom variables in an email distribution, email invitation for your survey. May 28th, the last week of the month, the last Thursday of the month, so we usually have these trainings on Tuesdays, but the last week of the month we're going to be holding a special free training on the Thursday, May 28th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And this is something brand new to QuestionPro. We're introducing conjoint analysis. And so we're going to show that. It's going to be done with our sister company Survey Analytics. And we're going to do a beginner's guide to conjoint analysis. So we're definitely going to show very advanced analytics, but we'll show step by step. You'll learn what conjoint analysis is, when you would want to use it, and how you can get it to work. This recording was, or excuse me, this training was recorded, and I will be sending out the link to the recording after we are done. Hopefully within the next 2 days, everyone should get a copy of the recording from today's session. Again, we have our 24 live support available. 24/7 live support, questionpro.com/help, as well as all of our help files online at questionpro.com/help. If you're trying to use QuestionPro and you get stuck, feel free to use either or both of those options, and hopefully we can help get you to where you need to be using QuestionPro. Again, if you want to sign up for next week's personalizing and customizing your survey, go to questionpro.com/webinar. Sign up for next week. And if there are no more questions, thank you very much for attending today, getting to learn a little bit more about how to make your surveys smart. We will see you next week.